Okay, welcome everybody to today's presentation on 7 best negotiating tips. We have our presenter, Jack Tumminello. He has presented for us in the past, and we're very excited and welcome him today. Uh, as we get started, though, I do want to talk a little bit about SCORE, just to make sure that you know everything we do and you're taking full advantage of all that we offer. As you know, the objective of SCORE is to share small business information with you. We do that in a couple different ways. One, the score.org website. Lots of great information, templates you can download, not just for business plans, for marketing plans, budgets, cash flow, lots of great information. You're going to find articles, you're going to find recorded or on demand webinars, you're going to find podcasts, lots of really great information. So, worth the time digging around in there. The other way we share information, as you know, would be through our webinars and our workshops. Those are advertised through our social media accounts, through our newsletter, and they are also listed on the website. The most important thing, or the most important way we share small business information, is going to be through our mentoring. Our mentors are volunteers. They come to us from a variety of backgrounds, and they have skill sets and they have experiences that they've learned from that they want to share with you. We work with folks that are at any stage. You could be, I'm trying to decide if small business is right for me, planning phase, in business phase, growing that business phase, or exiting that business phase. So we work with everyone. If you've never had a mentor before, a beginning session, they're going to want to learn about you, what your goals and challenges are, and they're going to help you put together a plan so that you can be successful. It's not uncommon that you'll have a relationship with your primary mentor, and then they'll bring in others as your needs change, just to make sure you're getting everything that you need. So the next logical question is going to be, how do I get a mentor? It is so easy. You can go to the score.org website. There are multiple ways to get a mentor. Probably the easiest is the blue box there, example there. Let us do the matching for you. You put in your zip code that matches you to the chapter that's nearest you. It'll pop up a contact form. We want to know what your business is, where you are, and what your current goal or challenges are. That information will be used to help match you to the mentor that's best suited to assist you. So, a little bit about today. We will have a question period for our presenter. If you can put those in Q&A, that is better. We won't lose track of them. They don't get lost in chat. So the Q&A tab on the Zoom bar, if you can put your questions there, we will get through probably all of them, but as many as possible at the end of the presentation. We are recording. We are not sharing slides. We are recording though, and you will be able to find it, and it will be posted in about 24 to 48 hours on the score.org/Boston website. If you're from the graphic there, you can see, go to the local workshops tab on the blue bar, and under that pull down is previously recorded webinars, and it will be listed there. So I'm going to go ahead and pull down my share and allow Jack to get his all set up.
Oh, good.
And it's all yours, Jack.
Thank you. Let me share. Okay, we're almost there, guys. This will all go away. All right, thank you, Teresa. Hopefully everybody can see everything that's here.
It looks great, Jack.
Okay, great. We're all set then. So this is the 7 best negotiating tips. This is a course that I've developed probably 7 or 8 years ago now. Not to get into a lot of my background, but I'm an entrepreneur and a retired CEO. I've always been an entrepreneur. It's just in my blood, probably in your blood too. And you're always trying to create new things. Now, when it comes to negotiating, I'm not here to tell you how to negotiate at all, or at least from the beginning, because you've already been negotiating all your life, from an infant when you cry and you want to get fed, and you get fed and you stop crying. That's essentially a negotiation. Um, Somebody has something that you want, and the other person has something that they want, and you exchange. What I'm here to do is to try and show you that there are some better ways of doing it. And making better deals is really what this workshop is all about. So let's get started with that and just understand that where I'm going with this is that it's all about making better deals. One of the interesting things I find about this seminar is that it really gives you an opportunity to jump the learning curve. Yeah, I presume everybody knows what the learning curve is. Learning curve is you go through time and your knowledge increases, and along the way you're going to make a lot of mistakes and you're going to have a lot of failures. You're going to have lots of successes. And when you get to be 50 or 60 years old or whatever it is, you're going to be saying, gee, if I only knew what I knew back then, boy, I really would be super successful. That's your learning curve. Um, Here, in this case, what I'm showing you is my learning curve and the outcome of my learning curve, if you will. It's all based upon my personal experience, both successes and failures. Um, the, the, um, the tips that I'm going to offer you today are really, this is really great. They're universal and they're timeless. Um, it's unlike technology, which you got to keep on changing and thinking about. When it comes to these tips, you'll be using these 10 years from now. You'll be using these 20 years from now, and you would have been using them 20 years ago. So they are universal and they're timeless. I continue to use them. I'll probably share some of that with you as I go through the course. And I can't help but do this, but um, as we're going through here today, there are going to be some other tips that come along that I've used that you're welcome to pick up on and use. So take what you want, learn them once, and then use them for a lifetime. That's the benefit to you. So let's talk about negotiate. What do you mean by negotiate? And it's a really simple definition. We're just communicating in search of mutual agreement. We're just trying to get two parties, two people, two groups, doesn't matter, to communicate. And that can happen in emails and in conversations and arguments and whatever else. But you are communicating, okay, in search of a mutual agreement where you're both satisfied with the outcome. And that's what they mean by negotiate. So we know examples like the police negotiation of a hostage negotiation. We also, here's a scene from the movie Casablanca where the gentleman in this suit is trying to sell Ilsa some lace, and he keeps adjusting the price, trying to get her to buy this or to buy the lace, and he keeps finding reasons to lower the price, lower the price. She never buys it, but that's okay. If you're a baseball fan, my gosh, July 31st just passed. We were all waiting for what trades and deals were going to be made, and there were a ton of them made. Boston picked up a couple of pitchers. Um, I guess we could all sit back and say, well, we wish they had picked up a number two pitcher, but they didn't. But on the other hand, I don't think they really wanted to give up what they had already, and I guess I would support that. There's also international negotiation. Trump is supposed to meet with Putin, is supposed to meet with Zelensky, all this negotiation that's going on. If you care to, if we all try and watch TV at night and see something. There is this movie with Tom Hanks in it. It's called The Bridge of Spies, and it's all about the exchange of a prisoner, Rudolph Abel, in exchange for Francis Gary Powers, who was the U-2 pilot shot down over Russia, I think in the early 1960s. And all the negotiation that had to go on between Russia and Tom Hanks, who plays this lawyer, and actually the East Germans also. So very entertaining, great movie. you'll see as you go through this course, you'll see some of the techniques that were used in the course actually in the film. So better deals improve business. We all know that sales and customer relations and partnerships and joint ventures and contracts with the purchasing agreements, all of this is very typical negotiation material. But it goes beyond that. You work on a project team. Um, Teamwork requires negotiation. If you're a manager, you're negotiating with your employees all the time for better performance. And if you do that correctly, you have more retention and less turnover. And retention is one of the most costly, or turnover is the most costly item of a business. You can manage employee disputes, and it certainly affects your business reputation in the public marketplace. So I have always thought, and I still believe this, is that negotiation isn't just for salespeople, it's for everybody. And it is an essential business skill. I need to give you, just get all of us get up on the same page here. Anatomy of a negotiation. Let's suppose that this car is up for sale, and I just want to get us all on the same page. So the buyer comes to that negotiation with two numbers in their head, or two points in their head. One is they call the aspiration price, which is in this case $16,000. What that buyer would be willing to pay. That's what they'd love to pay for that car. They also come with a reservation price. The reservation price is what they're not going to spend above that. They don't want to spend anything more than that. So that's the buyer. But at the same time, the seller is going to come along with his or her aspiration price, which is in this case $22,000, and their reservation price, which is $18,000. And in this case, what they're saying is, I'm not going to sell it below $18,000 because maybe I could be doing other things. Maybe I should just fix up the car. I'm just not getting enough for it. So maybe I should do this or should do that, or I should gift it or do something. But in the middle, there is a zone. And not to get into the acronyms here, but it's called a ZOPA. Um, the zone of potential agreement. In other words, between the buyer's reservation price and the seller's reservation price. And a negotiation might go something like this. How much are you asking? Oh, 22,000. Well, that's a little bit high. How about 16,500? He said, well, the guy says, no, no, it's got, $500 in new tires. I can't do that. He said, well, okay, how about 17? And the buyer comes, or the seller comes back and says, no, it's only got 55,000 miles on it. Why don't we split the difference? And sure enough, they settle in on $19,500. And so in the end, here's where it ended up. It ended up just below reservation price of the buyer, and it approaches the aspiration price of the seller. In 1981, there was a book written by two Harvard professors, Urey and Fisher. And they wrote a book called Getting to Yes. And these are two Harvard professors. And they really came up with this whole concept of win-win negotiating. And this is what it began to crystallize. And their basic message, and what we're going to be talking a lot about today, is one, stop competing. You're not trying to beat the other person. What you're trying to do is starting to collaborate. And if you can collaborate, you'll be surprised at how often both parties end up better off than they thought they were going to be. But it takes collaborating, it takes communication. So the topics I'm going to cover today are value, which is really very fundamental. We'll talk about leverage and strategy. We'll talk about what I call black swans in the negotiation parlance, that means unknowns. We'll talk about the fact that all negotiators are human, and we'll be dealing with the devil. How do we do that? And then how to close the deal. So, and then we'll have some summary and some questions and answers. And if you can hold your questions and answers, it's easier to manage the timeline that we have, which is pretty short. So let's talk about value. Value is a word we use every day. There's no value in that. Oh, that's great value. I don't value that. We use it, but do we really understand what it means? So let me get a little bit deeper into it because it's really, really important. Most of you are probably familiar with this image of the Dutch purchasing the island of Manhattan, in this case from the Native Americans, the Canarsie Native Americans in 1626. And as the story goes, the amount of goods that were exchanged in exchange for New York were like $24, $26 worth of goods. And most people kind of chuckle a little bit about this and they say, boy, what a deal. What a great deal for the Dutch. They got the island of Manhattan, all that land, that island, a perfect port, all of that. And what did the Indians get? The Native Americans get? They got some cloth. They got some pottery. They got some metal knives. Um, so I'm going to show you why it's not lopsided. And we're going to get to that in a minute. So, value, it's relative, and that's the key word, relative worth, utility, or importance. What is it worth to me? What is it worth to you? Two different things. For example, there are three parts to value. One, you have to understand that it's individual and personal. I went to Europe this spring, came back, and I had a 100 euro note in my wallet. And if I had it right here with me now, and if we had everybody out there, I might say, oh, by the way, I've got this 100 euro note. Who will buy it from me? And at what price will you buy it from me at? And you might get some people who looked at it in terms of today's exchange rate, it might be worth $118, um, given that as the exchange rate with the euro. And so that might be what it really would be worth in Europe, but we're here. So somebody who has no interest in going to Europe and has no plans to go there, the answer really is, well, I don't want it at all. So the value to me is zero. Whereas somebody else who's saying, gee, I'm going to go next week. This would be really great to be able to put a little cash in my pocket. And if I can get it at a discount, that would be great. So they might offer $75 as opposed to the 118 that it's worth. And I, as a seller, as somebody who's offering it, might say, well, okay, I'll take the $75 if there's no other offers, because that's better than what am I going to do with a 100 euro note over here in the United States? I could try and turn it in, but by the time you discount everything and go to the bank and do all this stuff, you might only end up with $75 in the end. So uh, the message here is that it's individual and personal. It all depends on what you want and your particular situation. The second thing you need to understand about value is that it's variable. Let's suppose that I'm going for an interview. I'm going to meet a client, and I start walking downtown Boston, and I'm all dressed up, tie, jacket, the whole thing. And as I start to walk by Macy's, I notice that it starts to rain. Ah, I can't do this. I can't get all wet, and I don't have an umbrella. I can't do this because I don't want to look like a blob. So I dart into Macy's. I go to uh, the umbrella rack, And I look at the umbrellas and I go, oh, $35. That's a little pricey for an umbrella, but what am I going to do? It's raining out. I really need this. I'll have to pay up for it. So I grab the umbrella. I go over to the cashier, and just before I buy the umbrella, okay, I look outside and the sun has come out. What has happened is that the value has changed. It has gone from zero to high back to zero. In other words, I didn't carry an umbrella with me because I didn't think it would rain, and I had no, it did, just being carrying something that I didn't want to do. But then when it rained, I went in and got something. I was going to buy it. I was willing to pay $35 for it. But when I looked outside and the sun come out, I put it back on the rack and walked out and went to my appointment. Value is relative. And the third thing is that perception is reality. Your perception of something is your reality. This is a little cartoon here, but there's a guy playing with his son and tossing him up in the air, and the father sees it just looking like this. Not bad. I mean, it's just a little toss up in the air. Child, on the other hand, has a little bit of a different perspective. That's going up in the air. He says, "Hey, Dad, this is a little high. I'm getting a little nervous." And of course, the mother starts screaming at the father, saying, "What are you doing? Stop throwing my son up in the air, way, 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 way up there." Even though the reality is probably more like the father's reality in this situation, the mother and the son see it in two different ways. So perception is reality in this case. What I perceive to be of value is not what you might perceive to be as of value. So let's go back to the Canarsie Native Americans and the purchase of Manhattan for a second. We said that many people look at this as an enormously lopsided trade. Trinkets and jewels or beads and things in exchange for the entire island of Manhattan. Well, if you think about it, what value Canarsie, by the way, Canarsie is out near Brooklyn, near JFK Airport. The Canarsie Indians, the Canarsie Native Americans, I'm sorry, were in Manhattan just hunting. And they happened to be there and they were approached by the Dutch. So what happened is that the Canarsie Native Americans looked at this and said, well, you're going to give us this stuff. We can use these knives because we never had knives. We've never had cloth. These are very valuable to us because it's unique to them. They never had these things. Whereas the Dutch, on the other hand, had lots of it. They were wearing it. They had it. So, and the Native Americans said, look, we've got all the land and sea and hunting grounds that we know to do with. So giving an island away that we have to row over to hunt in, that's an easy choice. You can have it. It's not of value to the Native Americans. The Dutch found it very valuable. So it really wasn't very lopsided because the Native Americans got something very unique that they've never had before, which was cloth and metal pots and knives, which they've never had in the past. So that was new. That's a very big benefit to them. And of course, the Dutch got the island itself too. Tip number one, don't assume what you value is what others value. Next is leverage. You go into a negotiation and you're going to want that other person to get closer to your position. You're either going to pull them closer or you're going to push them closer to your position. And of course, they are going to do the same thing. They're going to either push you or they're going to pull you. And there's all sorts of leverage that we're very, very familiar with. You can offer a discount on something. Um, you can customize a service. You can offer to pay more for a product. In other words, pay more to get what you want. The guy who was buying the car was paying more and was willing to pay more. But the seller was also willing to offer discounts on the product. Um, there's act fast bonuses. There's performance reviews. Now, I'll come back to that in a second. There's negative leverage too, such as you can terminate a service. You can put penalties or interest on, a loan that's not paid off in time. Limited time offer, limited supply. Let's go back to this performance review, and I'll tell you a little story. 5 or 6 years ago, my dishwasher overflowed for some reason or other, somehow, I don't know how, but essentially it happened at night, and um, all of the water from the dishwasher flowed underneath the hardwood floors in the kitchen and living room. And and for those of you who know what I'm talking about, it buckled all the floors. I had to have all the floors removed, and I had to have all new hardwood flooring put in. But my first task was to get rid of the hardwood floors. So I had to find somebody who would rip up and tear out and get rid of all the old hardwood floors. And I had a guy come and he looked at it and he said he gave me a price. And I felt as though the price was a bit high. So I said, well, that's a little bit high. I said, I'll tell you what, here's what I'm willing to do. I said, I'm an avid critiquer of services and travel and so on. What I'm willing to do is if you can trim some of the price off of your quote here, I'd be more than happy to write a review to support your business and post it wherever you want. He came back and he took $500 off of the bill. $500. So that performance review, in one way or another, was worth to him, value to him, $500. For me, it was a very simple thing to do. For 5 minutes, I can write a review, post it, and I'm done. So I ended up with something very valuable for me. He obviously got something very valuable for him that was worth $500. And it's all about leverage and negotiation. Let me ask you this question. When you go into a job interview or whatever, and it's the only opportunity you have, how do you feel? Think about it. You feel nervous, anxious, uneasy. Um, that's how you feel. Now, let me ask you this. How do you feel in a job interview when you already have another job offer? You feel easy. You feel as though you can be more fluid in the conversation. You can converse more easily. You have a demeanor about you that is more upbeat, more positive. What's the difference? The difference is that your plan B, having a plan B, having something to fall back on, is your best leverage. So in negotiation, they have an expression called your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. If you don't negotiate an agreement, like with that car that we looked at, what are you going to do? Maybe you have a good BATNA. Maybe you have a good idea as to what you want to do. So, your best leverage in a negotiation is your plan B. What am I going to do? But let me offer you this. First of all, BATNAs can come and they can go. Suppose I'm walking down to that job interview I talked about in front of Macy's. My cell phone rings, and it turns out to be the guy who was very optimistic that he was going to get me a job the next day. So I was headed off to the second interview, really excited, upbeat. I was gonna really nail it. Phone rings, I answer it, and the guy says to me, yeah, Jack, we really thought about it, and the budget's really tight, so we're not going to be able to offer you the job offer that we talked about yesterday. All of a sudden, what I thought was my plan B has gone away. But on the other hand, you can also create your BATNA. When I had salespeople come to me and they would be all excited about a new deal that they have forming, I would say, great, that's really great. Congratulations. Now go get yourself another deal. Go get yourself another sale. Because by the time you get to the point of negotiating that deal, which might be a week or 2 weeks or a month later, by the time you get to that point, things could change. And if you have another sale that helps you make quota, then you're going to feel really good about where you are. Smart negotiators never stop building their BATNA, and that's what I mean by salespeople going out. It gives you options, it gives you confidence, and it leverages better deals for you. So tip number 2, never stop building your BATNA. It's really important to keep it going. Strategy. Third part. Here's a question that almost everybody always asks. Should I make the first offer when I'm negotiating? Do you? If I were to ask everybody in this room, this virtual room, from my experience of doing this personally, I would say that 60% of them would say, no, let the other person make the offer first. Well, let's take a look and see if that's right. This is what's called the great anchor debate. And anchors create a cognitive bias. Here's these social psychologists do these all the time. It's really, really great stuff. Um, in this case, they took a big jar of jelly beans and they said, are there more or less than 2,000 jelly beans in this jar? And how many do you think there are? That was to Group A. Subset of people, Group A. Then they went to Group B and they said, are there more or less than 6,000 jelly beans? And how many do you think there are? Well, here's the outcome. The outcome is that the 2,000 and the 6,000 created a cognitive bias. It created a cognitive bias. You were thinking about the 6,000 and you were maybe saying to yourself, well, maybe there is 6,000 here. So you guessed a little higher than if you would if the number was planted at 2,000. Another example. Students were asked whether they were willing to be a camp counselor 2 hours a week for 2 years, and all of them said no. All right. Then they asked that same group, would you volunteer for a 2-hour trip? And 50% of them said yes. Okay, great. What if there were no anchor? What if there was no 2 hours for 2 hours a week for 2 years? No anchor, just simply, hey, would you volunteer to be for a single 2-hour trip? But only 17% said yes. So the anchor creates a cognitive bias, and the end result of a negotiation will end up closer to whoever sets the anchor. When you so the answer to the question is that which comes first? I'm going to tell you that you should be the one who sets the price. You go first. Retail stores do this. You walk into a Macy's or wherever, and you see some sweaters on the front, right up front, and it says $325 for this sweater, and you go, wow, that's a lot, everything else. I can't afford that. But then when you go in the back of the store and you see other sweaters for $175, which you would have normally thought was a lot, you begin to think, well, gee, maybe that's a real deal because it's 175, not three and a quarter. So it's a cognitive setting of a bias. New car showrooms, the price is always there. It's right up front. Here's the price. And they've set the anchor. Real estate listings, salary offers is another one of doing it. Somebody says, well, in an interview, they say, well, here's what I'm willing to offer. And then you tend to negotiate all around that particular number. How to counter an anchor? Let's suppose that you're going for a job interview as a project manager. I don't know what the values are or the prices are now, but let's suppose that you're doing this research and you get to the interview and the interviewer says, "Well, we're offering $75,000 for the position," and and uh, uh, the other person says, "Well, gee, that seems a bit low. How do you counter that number that he just put out there or she just put out there of 75,000?" Well, if you were to say to them, Bill, um, I was on the internet last night and in anticipation of today's meeting, and I looked up comparable salaries for project managers in the same or similar industries to what we're talking about here, with what I think are the same types of responsibilities, and they were being, offered at 95 or $100,000 because you could offer research and education and offer real data. That's how you counter an anchor. Otherwise, you'll be negotiating around the 75,000 the whole time. So in that case, now you've maybe moved that employer up off of the 75, and maybe you can get him up into the 90s or 95. Let's take a look at the job descriptions again and compare. It's how you compete. The reason why people always feel as though they don't want to go first um, is because they think that maybe the other person will offer more than I'm really going to say. Well, the way you counter that is you do your homework. Beforehand, if you're going to go buy a car like that car we just saw, um, go online and get some prices, educate yourself as to what the number is, and then set a realistic number that you want to negotiate off of. Um, because if that negotiation with that car was something like, hey, I see your car is for sale. I'll buy it for $16,000. If you don't know what the value of that car is, um, you might begin to say, well, no, it's got new tires, how about 16.5? And all of a sudden, um, you're not going to get the price that you want. So do your homework. And tip number three, when it comes to negotiation, go first, anchor. A little exercise here. I want to prove a point for you. Connect the 9 dots here with 4 straight lines. Some of you have probably seen this before. It's a little contest. Just kind of go slow for a half a second here, and I'll let you think about this for a minute. And if you can draw the lines, great. If you can't, it's okay. Take it home tonight and bring it to your kids and try it at home and see if they can do it. So you're going to use 4 straight lines without lifting your pen from the paper. Okay. So because we don't have lots of time, I'll take you through the answer. There's the first line. There's the second line. There's the third line, and there's the fourth line. Now, some people will say, wait a minute, you went outside the box. What's this up here? You went way up high beyond the third dot. Well, there was no rule here that says I couldn't go outside what you're perceiving as a box. There is no box. You are just perceiving it to be a box. So we all live in a box. This is my point. We all live within the confines of what we think we know. Humans have instincts and DNA. We have our education, we have our life experiences, and we have our business. All of those things create a box, and we live within that box. That doesn't mean there's not a world outside that box. It just means that that's what it is. When it comes to a product or a service, you have the same thing. You have a product or service underneath, you have a price, you have features, and you have requirements. Um, so there is a box there. There's a perception of a box. It's not really a box. That's just the terms, that's just the details. And before you can think outside of the box, you have to be smart enough to know that you can go outside the box. And that's what we're going to be talking with this called the black swans. Black swans are your unknowns in a negotiation. This is a conference that I put together, one of my entrepreneurial things. I negotiated a deal with Disney, and I negotiated a deal with Chambers of Commerce, and I put them together, put together a program. I used Disney's as training, so I knew this. Um, And I went to Disney and I said, how would you like to get in touch with all the small business owners out there and draw them down to your facility down here in Orlando? And oh, they were great. We talked about it, and I eventually put it together, and it was a very successful deal because on the one hand, Disney was teaching, on the other hand, I had the Chambers of Commerce marketing the business the conference to its members, and then they would go down to Florida, and for 3 days, the way that I designed the program, it went from 7 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon or 12:30 or something like that. And so you're done at 12:30 or essentially at your lunchtime. Go enjoy Disney World after that. So you have that opportunity. I didn't know when I first started this. I figured I'd negotiate with Disney. Well, that was Disney's um, education group. They then said, well, Jack, you're going to have to go negotiate with the hotel folks for rooms. So I got in touch with the hotel folks, and they started quoting prices that were exorbitant. I mean, I just couldn't deal with the model wasn't going to work. The business model wasn't going to work. It was going to be too expensive because they were quoting $300 a night for 3 nights, and there was not going to be any room for making any profit on it. And in conversation with the guy that I was talking to, he said, "Let me ask you a question." He said, "Do you have to conduct the programs on the particular weeks you were talking about?" I go, "No, I mean, I just figured those were pretty good weeks, but if you got other weeks that are better, let me know what they are." And he said, "Well, how about this week and this week? I can really discount these rooms for you if you were to conduct these programs during these weeks, which were down weeks for Disney." That's a black swan. That's discovering something that I didn't know, and he offered, and we ended up doing the deal together. So when you're in a negotiation, you always hear positions. Here's the price, here are the requirements, here's the features, etc. But what you want to ask that person, what you want to get to is what are their interests? There are lots of different interests. This police negotiator, the New York City police negotiation team, their motto is talk to me. Talking is so important. When I put the deal together for Disney, where I came up with the idea, um, I took a guy that I met. I don't know how I met him, but we met at a um, maybe a mutual introduction or something. And he was the vice president of the Chamber of Commerce Executives Association. And I took him to the Four Seasons in Boston, and we sat down and we had a 2 hour lunch. And over that 2 hour lunch, he revealed to me another business that I could work a parallel business off of. But it took time to talk and to listen and to hear what he had to say. And it was from that he and I united together and drove the Disney program forward. So, what you want to do in a negotiation is to discover the possibilities, seek out the interests of the other person, not their positions. Ask discovery questions. Well, why do you do? What do you need? When? How? Why are you selling the car that you're selling? Oh, well, I'm moving to Denver tomorrow, and I really got to sell this car. Oh, okay. Well, if I buy the car, when can I get it? Well, if I get the car, how are you going to get to the airport tomorrow? Well, maybe I'll give you a ride. Well, there's all sorts of ways. What are you going to do with the bike rack on top of the car? What are you going to do with the bike on top of the car? All sorts of things just to explore. So, in a negotiation, it's always good to use your two eyes and your two ears and one mouth proportionally. In other words, listen 80% of the time. And we always use the expression, you're not listening to me, which is very common for families, kids, arguments. And great negotiators work at listening. They pay attention. They listen completely. We all are guilty of this. We always try to jump ahead. And for some reason or other, we feel as though we have to finish the other person's sentence. I don't know, maybe it's to show our wisdom or our smarts or something, but listen completely, listen to them completely. Listen to learn. Maybe they're going to tell you something that you don't know about. And that's what I found out at this luncheon. That I learned something about another business which had the same business model, had to do with something else entirely. It had to actually do with a guy who was um, who had done a deal with the Chinese government and the airlines, and he was offering was it a 1 week or a 2 week trip to China for small business people. Um, I think he's still doing it. It was like $2,000. So you went it included the airfare, it included the hotels, it included all the meals. Well, it was highly subsidized, clearly, but he was sending something like 20,000 people a year to China and back on business trips. You're a small manufacturer, something like that. Chambers of Commerce do this all the time. If anybody's interested, go to your local Chamber of Commerce and you'll find out. Avoid rebuttal listening. This is very common for all of us. We're always thinking, well, this guy is saying this, and we're thinking to ourselves, well, how am I going to rebut what he's saying? Well, maybe that interferes with listening completely. And ask clarifying questions. So tell me more about that. Can you explain that? So tip number 4: focus on interests, not positions. All negotiators are human. Sounds Yeah, so, um, but it's really, 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 really important. Maya Angelou once said, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. Uh, you can go back in your memory, and I know you'll come up with things that saying, yeah, yeah. I know situations where it's not a matter of what they said or how bad they said it or whatever, that it's how they made me feel, both good and bad. So I try to live by this. It's a It's a great mantra. It's a great thing to keep in your head all the time. Don't focus on what you're saying. Don't focus on what you might have done. Focus on how you're making the other person feel. So here are two gentlemen, let's say they're negotiating, but you can see that there is a good conversation that's going on. They're talking to each other. They're open. Their body language is great. Um, they're obviously talking about an idea or a suggestion or something, but it is good stuff, and they're making each other feel good about the conversation. And it begins with respect. Uh, One is to pay attention. I learned as an entrepreneur, you're always selling. So your businesses and everything else, you are the number one salesperson in any business you're going to run. You're the top salesperson. You have to be. So when it comes to taking notes, when I went on sales calls, and I would take a territory and I would do my own selling. But when I went to a meeting, I always paid attention and I took minimal notes. I just didn't write anything down unless it was somebody's name or a phone number or something. I just paid attention to the other person, and the meeting would go on for an hour and a half. And after I got finished with the meeting, I'd go find a Starbucks or a coffee shop or wherever, and I was able to completely write down everything that I heard that was important because I paid attention. And I would then follow up with an email or a letter back to the client or the prospect, identifying all the things that we talked about. And more often than not, the person would come back and say, "Yep, Jack, that's really good. That's what we talked about. Now let's go to the next level." Be interested. Acknowledge that the person, if you know, acknowledge their opinion with empathy. Um, Understand them. Engage in a professional manager. That's what you saw the two guys doing. They were both very professional talking to each other. Um, Engaging as an equal. And if you make a mistake, own up to it. People make mistakes, they make errors. Just own up to it. Ways to build rapport. This is kind of interesting. Always start with a compliment. Um, you can do this. You can do this every day of your life. Um, when you meet somebody, find a reason to say something nice. I've gone to uh, sales calls, and you get to a new facility, and it's a gorgeous facility, and the guy comes and he has come on with me. We'll go back to the conference room, and I might say, "Geez, this is." I'm sorry. He said, "Gee, this is really a great facility here. The brook and the pond and the outside." You're saying something nice about, if nothing else, the building and the company. Um, it's just start with a compliment. Remember to use names. If you can do this, my daughter is great at this. She remembers everybody's names. I don't know how she does it, but she knows everybody's names and she'll remember them forever. Um, Express empathy. If you feel as though you want to connect with somebody and they don't seem to be right, um, express empathy. I understand. I'm sorry you feel that way, or I'm sorry about this, or whatever it might be. Own up to problems. This is really good if you're making calls into, say, Xfinity. Instead of calling them and yelling and screaming at them, team up with them. Um, I have fun doing these phone calls. I'll call up and I'll say something like, "Hey, I understand you're the number one guy on the support team." I said, you know, "Let's do this together. I think I'm having a problem. Maybe you can help me. Together we can do this." And people respond very well to that when you treat them as an equal and you co-own the problem. You don't blame them for a problem. You simply say, "I'm having a problem." I said, "And today maybe the two of us can work through it." So you team up. And the four most powerful words I found in business, can you help me? Nobody ever turns you down when you say, can you help me? I used to make phone calls into businesses and you can't get to the person you want to see. So I would just dial any old extension number and, somebody would answer and I'd say, oh, I'm looking for so-and-so. Can you help me? And I say, yeah, sure. Let me transfer you. So you can't do this so much today, but um, can you help me? Really, really powerful. Trust is a must. Words matter a lot. Think versus feel. We already talked about that a little bit. Maya Angelou's feel. Think. If I ask you, what do you think about the Red Sox today? And then I ask you, how do you feel about the Red Sox today? You're going to give me two different answers. So choosing think versus feel and using them is very important. Here is an actual situation. Changing one word saved my first business. I had a business where I aggregated all of the training schedules of all the seminar and training providers in the country and put it into a single database. And then I would sell seats. It was kind of like the Amazon model before there was an Amazon. That's how old I am. And it was really great. It was a great idea. We were going to become a hub, a transaction hub for people going into training programs by lots of different vendors. And the vendors that are out there, the training providers out there, the industry was kind of like a mile wide and an inch deep. There were thousands of them, but they were all very small providers, which was fine. It's just the way it was. Um, so to make the business model work, um, I needed to get a 30% commission on whatever I sold. So that if if a customer came to me and bought a program from American Management Association, I wanted to get 30% of that transaction. And so the person on my staff who was going out and selling these things to the vendors, because we had to get the vendors to agree to our terms, um, he came back and he said, I'm having no success at all. Nobody's going to pay us a 30% commission. Everybody's turning us down. We're getting nowhere. And it was kind of like, oh, this is not good news. And we were sitting in a meeting and we're all kind of staring at each other because we didn't know what to do. And one of the guys says, why don't we just say that we want to buy their program at 70% of list price? From that day forward, we never had another problem. Every vendor signed up, not a problem, more than willing, okay, to allow us to buy their program. If we brought them a customer, they were willing to sell us that program for 70%, which we'd pass on to the customer. And the customer, of course, would pay 100%. So even flipping the conversation, flipping the communication, um, saved my business. Tip number 5, they'll never forget how you made them feel. Just just keep that really close to your hearts. Dealing with the devil. We've all been there. Um, Intimidated. Who is this person? They have an assertive personality. They're old style win-lose negotiation. They want to control the conversation. Um, they need to feel important, okay? And they're rather uncompromising in what they're going to do. So that it's really a difficult situation because how do you deal with this type of, I call them the devil, because they're the people you don't want to go negotiate or deal with. Well, the best advice I can give you is to build your confidence. It's really important for you to know your stuff. Take your time, know your stuff. If you know your stuff, you're going to gain the other person's respect. And they're going to say, this person really understands what they're talking about. So I'm going to listen to them. So that's the first step. Okay. Anticipate the toughest questions the other person is going to ask. Um, Brainstorm answers. If you got a team, you're going on a big sales call, you're going to go meet with somebody. Um, Talk to them. Talk to the group. What do you think I should answer? What do you think he's going to ask or she's going to ask? How do you think I should best answer it? Brainstorm the questions. Brainstorm answers. Practice out loud. Um, you may we all do this. You're on your way to a meeting. Your mind is going 1,000 miles an hour, but it's your mind. It's not your voice. It's not your mouth. It's much better if you're in your car and you're going out to a client site, say whatever you're saying out loud. Because until you do, you really don't own the words. And it really makes you a lot more comfortable to get your mouth in sync with your thoughts. Up until that point, they're only thoughts. And you don't want to be in the middle of the meeting trying to find the words for your thoughts. If you're going to make a phone call and it's really important, stand up. Just stand up and make the phone call. Um, it works a lot better than just sitting there. Dealing with the devil, check your emotions at the door. This is really important. Somebody once told me this, and it really, you kind of keep it close to you. Um, a lot of this is it's not personal, it's business. Okay. You may very well be, if the person is really aggressive and angry, you don't know what it's about. You don't know what's happened in that person's life to bring them into that situation. Maybe it's something that just happened in the morning. Maybe he had a flat tire on the way to work and he's irritated by it, and it's a problem, and he's anxious, and he's paying money to get the car fixed and towed, and his hands are all dirty. Um, Offer some empathy, and understand it may not be you, it may be something else. Emphasize commitment. Look at, Tom, this is a difficult conversation we're having. I know that it's tough for you guys, it's tough for us. All I'm trying to do is work to the best mutual outcome for the two of us. How to deal with the devil? Keep focused on the problem. Keep focused on the problem. Don't make it personal. Don't say no. Suggest options. It's another technique. It's another way of doing things. Don't say no. Um, just suggest options. If he said, "Well, how about this?" You don't say no. You just simply say, "Well, interesting. What if?" Okay, make your idea their idea. It's very simple to simply say, something you said to me a couple minutes ago really sparked an idea in my head. Let me pass it on. Let me put it on the table here, and we can talk about it. But I just made their idea my idea, or my idea their idea. Listen, they want to be heard. Pay attention. Listen. Involve others. You can do that. You can have your boss come, or a third party come, or something like that. It can get a little dicey because you now have another dynamic of a person in there. But I mean, sometimes you get to a point where you have to do that. And if conflict arises, just do all these things. Apologize if you have to take a break. Yeah, look at. Excuse me. Let me make a phone call. Let me go. Let's get a cup of coffee. Ask people to explain what the problem is, and then listen. Why do you feel that way? What can I do? Allow face saving. Don't ever box somebody in. Keep your focus on the problem. Closing the deal. Negotiator's checklist. I always believe that if you're going to go to negotiate something, it could be a sale, it could be a dispute with an employee. Spend time prepping. A good ratio is 4 to 1. If you're going to meet with somebody for an hour, you should spend 4 hours in advance, kind of going over and prepping yourself and getting your materials ready and getting your mind set and focused. You got to prep. You don't wing it. Are you talking to the decision maker? Rather fundamental, but a lot of times, if you're the decision maker, you want to be with the decision maker too. Do you have a strong backup? Do you have a plan B? What if you can't negotiate a deal? What if it doesn't materialize? What are you going to do? And if you have a plan B, that's where you want to be. Try to win win-win rapport. Work at good conversation with people and focus on interests. And have you made a good faith effort to really prepare and to negotiate and to do all the things we're talking about here today? If you made your good faith effort, then move forward. And the reasons why negotiations fail are clear. These are not, this is not rocket science, but if you don't have a rapport with somebody, it's not going to work out. Or my gosh, if you've blown your trust with them, or if you lied to them, or you deceived them, not good. Um, Lack of empathy, in other words, I don't care. Emotions, check them at the door. And if you have a failure to listen, it's not going to work. Um, some other helpful tips that you might value. Don't burn bridges. Relationships matter. In business, I don't know if you ever have a one-off relationship with somebody one time only, because it can come back 10 years later and say, oh, yeah, this is the guy that I heard and he told me. Be honest, good professionalism, and don't burn bridges. Explore with what if. Well, what if we did this, Tom? I had an idea. What if? What if? What if? What if? Keep putting them out there. All you can do is say no. Use think and feel tactically. When you want somebody to think about something or to feel about something, use the appropriate word. Keep an open mind to their ideas. This is really important because you're not the only one who's smart. They're not in the position that they're in without being smart too. So keep an open mind to their ideas. They may be better than yours. This is something I heard recently. Uh, Good news in bites, bad news all at once. Um, Social psychology is great. Um, one of the things that came up is that people would prefer to they would prefer to find two $10 bills on the ground in 2 days, over 2 days, than one $20 bill once. Human beings. Cover all the issues before negotiating. When you get to the final parts of a negotiation, and if it's a bigger negotiation, there's going to be a term sheet. And you're going to be putting together a term sheet as to what you all agree with. But prior to the term sheet, you're going to find maybe your client coming to you and saying, well, let's talk about some issues that I have here. And let me talk about this one, and then we can talk about it. Don't negotiate each individual issue as they come up. Listen to all the issues first, and then negotiate them all, either individual, but you will have known all the issues that they have. Otherwise, you might give away, you say, well, the first issue I have is this. And if you negotiate all around that, you might be giving away or doing something that may affect issue number 2 or issue number 3 or issue number 4. And all of a sudden you could end up at the end of that negotiation not being where you want to be. Ask for agreement, asking for agreement. Why do people fear this? Everybody's afraid to ask. Well, or they begin to keep talking. That's very common. People just keep on selling, and instead of getting, they want to keep on selling and keep on giving reasons, and hopefully the customer is going to say, "Yeah, I want to buy that." No, you got to ask the question. And frankly, all your counterpart can do is say no. So if they say no, what do? You say, well, tell me why. Let's talk about why this doesn't work for you. And let's see what we might be able to come together with negotiating. Let's think out of the box. Let's think what else, what are the other interests? How might we be benefit to you? So tip number 7, all your counterpart can do is say no. So ask the question, close the deal. Let's do the review. Tip number 1, don't assume what you value is what other people value. Um, Very common for us to say, oh, they'll love this. Well, not necessarily, not the same thing. We talked about this, that value is variable, it's individual, and it's perception. Never stop building your bat. Just keep in mind how good you feel when you have a plan B and you're going into a negotiation, and uh, your whole demeanor is going to be stronger and better. And it's going to be a good conversation. Go first and anchor. Anchoring is a good thing. It sets the tone. It sets the number. It puts it out there and says, fine, now let's negotiate off of that number. Focus on interests, not positions. We just talked about that. Interests are extremely important. Oh, and don't forget Maya Angelou. Okay. Please don't ever forget it. Okay. Keep how you make other people feel. Keep your focus on the problem in dealing with the devil. And all your counterpart can do is say no. So ask the question. Are we have an understanding? Do we have an understanding? Does this make sense for you? Should we draw up an agreement? Different ways of saying. Maybe you sit down and you write 14 or 15 different ways in which you can ask for the order, without it seeming so in your face. But if you do that and then you practice them, you're going to be pretty good at it. So those are my 7 best negotiating tips. I hope they are helpful to you. I hope that they will be valuable to you, not only today, tomorrow, but for the rest of your life. Just an aside, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or so, I sat down and when I was developing this course, I sat down and said, well, what would it have been like if I had known all this stuff back when I was 25 or 30 or 35 years old? And I think I came up with approaching $1 million in value to me over a lifetime. Because I could identify different things that I would have done or not done that either I failed at, or I didn't have it, or I should have known it. Maybe even more. I could keep on going. But clearly, use these tips, and you're going to find they're going to be of value to you throughout your entire lifetime. So at that, Teresa,
Yeah,
are there
I'm here.
questions and things?
Yeah. What if the time frame is much more condensed? For example, you're selling a product at like a farmer's market or a show where you have extremely limited time to talk to someone. How do you make that negotiation?
Um, Well, I guess I would if it's a limited time and you're at a trade, you're talking about a trade show or something.
Yeah, or a farmer's market or, that type of a situation where you're selling to a.
If you sense that it's an important conversation, let's say a trade show, for example, maybe you don't try to get the sale at that point. Maybe you just simply say, "Can I meet with you over coffee in 10 minutes?" Or can we go to have a cup of coffee? If you sense it's a really good deal coming, pull it aside. Um, don't do it right then and there where you can get all these disturbances and other people are coming in and so on. Isolate it and have the conversation so you can listen and they can talk. I guess that would be if I were at a trade show, which is the typical thing I don't know about a farmer's market. Farmer's market. hmm,
I would say it's similar because you want to figure out why they want to buy from you or why somebody would want to buy from you and engage in that direction as well. Listening, like you said.
yeah.
Yeah.
They want to hear from you. So have an environment where you can have that conversation.
Mhm. Okay. The other question is, there are two of them, but they're honestly the same. So I'm going to put them together into one question. So if you're in a situation where you feel you have no options, but you've been made an offer by someone else who you sense has other options, and their offer isn't beneficial to you, where should be the first place your brain goes? I mean,
Mm. So you feel as though the other person has, they can let the deal go. They don't
yeah,
have,
and you feel like you can't.
you can't. That's really difficult because they've got a plan B and you don't.
Yeah.
Um, I
Well,
think I think I think maybe you can try and keep the conversation going a little longer. See if you can explain. Um, you're at a crossroads because if you say, "Well, no, that's not good for me," then the risk is the person just walks away, right?
mhm.
That's the power of having a plan B. Um, try not to have try to have a plan B would be the first thing. But you can I mean it happens. I mean it happens a lot. Where they honestly think that they can just walk away. Well, sometimes you have to just accept what there is and fight. Well, maybe it's a deal. Say, okay, I can accept this deal, but maybe the terms are a little bit different than what you're offering. Maybe I can't give you a 2-year contract. I can only give you a 9-month contract or a
Mhm,
1-year contract. Maybe the terms can be different a little bit.
mhm. Right. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. Thanks, Jack. The comments in chat
Um,
are fantastic. Everyone's thanking you. I don't know if you've seen them, but we'll make sure we get those to you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we hope to see you on our next presentation. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye, folks.